There comes a moment in almost every human life when the noise disappears, when distractions stop working, when the endless routine suddenly feels strange. You wake up. You work. You eat. You scroll. You sleep. And then one day, without warning, a terrifying question appears inside your mind. What is the point of all this? Most people run from that question. They bury it beneath entertainment, beneath relationships, beneath ambition, beneath endless stimulation. But some people cannot escape it. Some people stare directly into the silence of existence. And few thinkers explored that silence more honestly than Albert Camus. Camus was not interested in comforting lies. He did not promise heaven. He did not promise destiny. He did not promise that suffering happens for a reason. Instead, he confronted one of the darkest realizations imaginable. What if life has no ultimate meaning? And more importantly, how should we live if that is true? Tonight, we enter the philosophy of the absurd. Not as students, but as human beings. Part 1: The Man Who Looked into the Void. Albert Camus was born in 1913 in Algeria. He grew up in poverty. His father died in World War I when Camus was still a baby. His mother worked endlessly just to survive. There was no privileged intellectual beginning. No luxurious life of philosophical reflection. Camus grew up surrounded by hardship. Perhaps this is why his philosophy feels so human. It was never detached from reality. He understood suffering. He understood loneliness. He understood uncertainty. And maybe most importantly, he understood the strange emotional exhaustion of being alive. As Camus grew older, he became fascinated by a problem that humanity has struggled with for centuries. Why do humans desperately seek meaning in a universe that offers none? Think about it. Human beings crave answers. We want to know. Why are we here? What is our purpose? What happens after death? Does suffering mean something? But when we ask the universe these questions, the universe remains silent. And that silence terrified Camus. Not because he was weak, but because he was honest. Most people never truly confront existence. They distract themselves until death arrives. But Camus believed that eventually, every conscious person encounters what he called the absurd. Part 2: What is the absurd? The absurd is not simply sadness. It is not depression. It is not nihilism. The absurd is born from a collision. A conflict. On one side, there is the human heart. A heart that desperately wants meaning, order, purpose, explanation. And on the other side, there is the universe. Cold, silent, indifferent. The absurd emerges when these two realities meet. Humans ask for answers. Existence gives none. And suddenly, life begins to feel strange. Camus believed many people experience this feeling without even realizing it. It appears in quiet moments. Late at night. During loneliness. After heartbreak. During repetitive routines. You suddenly look at your life from a distance. And everything feels mechanical. You wake up. Go to work. Repeat the same conversations. Repeat the same habits. Repeat the same days. And for a brief moment, it all feels absurd. Like a play with no explanation. Camus once described this feeling almost like waking up inside your own life. As if the illusion suddenly breaks. And honestly, many people spend their entire lives trying to escape that realization. Because the absurd is uncomfortable. It destroys illusions. It forces us to confront uncertainty. And perhaps the scariest truth of all. That existence does not owe us meaning. Part 3, The Question of Suicide. Camus believed that once a person truly confronts the absurd, one question immediately appears. If life has no ultimate meaning, why continue living? This became the central question of his famous work, The Myth of Sisyphus. Camus even said, "There is only one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide." Because before discussing morality, before discussing politics, before discussing success, we must first answer something deeper. Is life worth living? And surprisingly, Camus answered yes. But not because life contains cosmic meaning. Not because suffering is guaranteed to reward us. Not because existence becomes easy. No. Camus believed life is worth living precisely because it is absurd. This is where his philosophy becomes incredibly powerful. Most people assume meaninglessness leads automatically to despair. But Camus rejected that idea. He believed something else was possible. Freedom. If existence has no predetermined meaning, then humans are free. Free to create. Free to experience. Free to rebel. Free to live consciously. Camus did not see absurdity as a prison. He saw it as liberation. But to understand this, we must meet Sisyphus. Part 4, The Myth of Sisyphus. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus was condemned by the gods to perform an eternal punishment. He would push a massive boulder up a mountain. And every single time he reached the top, the rock would roll back down. Again. And again. Forever. No progress. No reward. No ending. At first glance, this sounds horrifying. But Camus saw something deeply human inside this myth. Because in many ways, human life resembles Sisyphus. We repeat routines endlessly. We chase goals. We struggle. We suffer. And eventually, death erases everything. The rock rolls back down. Future generations forget us. Civilizations disappear. Time consumes everything. And yet, Camus arrives at one of the most shocking conclusions in philosophy. He says, we must imagine Sisyphus happy. Why? Because Sisyphus becomes stronger than his punishment. The gods can control his labor. But they cannot control his consciousness. The moment Sisyphus accepts the absurdity of his condition, he becomes free. This is the heart of Camus' philosophy. Not false hope. Not denial. Not escape. Acceptance. To fully see the absurdity of existence. And still continue living. Still continue loving. Still continue creating. Still continue experiencing the beauty of life. That, for Camus, is rebellion. Part 5, The Absurd Hero. Camus admired people who lived without illusions. People who understood that life is uncertain, but chose to live passionately anyway. He called this figure the absurd hero. The absurd hero does not need eternal meaning. They do not require cosmic guarantees. They live fully despite uncertainty. And honestly, this idea feels incredibly modern. Because today, many people feel disconnected. Religion no longer gives certainty to everyone. Society feels fragmented. Technology overwhelms us. People feel isolated even while constantly connected. And beneath all the stimulation, many quietly wonder, what is the point of my existence? Camus does not give a comforting answer. But perhaps he gives something more valuable. Courage. The courage to face reality without illusions. The courage to continue despite uncertainty. The courage to build meaning with your own hands. This is why Camus rejected both blind optimism and total despair. He walked a middle path. A path of awareness. A path where humans acknowledge the absurd, without surrendering to hopelessness. And maybe that is one of the hardest things a person can do. To wake up every day knowing life is fragile and temporary, and still choose to love it. Maybe the absurd is not a curse. Maybe it is an invitation. An invitation to stop living mechanically. To stop waiting for certainty. To stop postponing life. And instead, fully enter the present moment. Albert Camus once imagined Sisyphus walking back down the mountain. Not defeated, but conscious. Aware of his condition. And somehow, free. Perhaps freedom does not come from escaping absurdity. Perhaps freedom begins the moment we accept it. The universe may remain silent. But despite that silence, humans continue to love. Continue to create. Continue to dream. Continue to resist despair. And maybe that rebellion is enough. We must imagine Sisyphus happy.